Hi, my name is Brittany Mahoney, and I'm speaking today about what I've learned through the lens on deaf identities of this course. Identity is a cognitive social construct encompassing characteristics connecting a person to a specific social group. Immersing myself in the deaf culture and identity has allowed me to reflect on my own as well. This course thus far has led me on a journey through deaf identities in society today. Before this course, I had never explored my identity and how variables in my life affect who I am. I have learned a lot about not only myself, but about others' identities as well through this course, specifically deaf identities. Deafness is viewed by society as a disability and a deficiency of the ear. Those who have learning loss are seen as being powerless, incompetent, violating the norm, a burden to society, and a condition needing fix. This view on deafness by society has brought to my attention the effects that society has on one's own identity. The deficit model of deafness and impairment is an unfair way to view another's identity and has led me to have a different perspective on deafness. It is unfair for us to try and choose someone else's identity for them. I view them as some of the most courageous and brave individuals in society today because of the stigma and oppression placed by society on deaf individuals. Deaf individuals go through many stages of exploration, including confusion, frustration, anger, imploration, identification or rejection, ambivalence, and acceptance before they embrace and become comfortable with their own identity. The deaf have to endure this identity crisis because at first they define themselves in response to perceptions from outsiders, but each person endures different life situations. Therefore, there is not one answer to identity formation, not one person can create the identification for another. As a minority group, the ability of the deaf individuals to move forward through the many identity categories and explorations and withstand society's standards and find their own identity is truly inspiring. The deaf can find themselves at one point in their life at a crossroads of how they identify themselves, as either deaf with a big D, little d, hard of hearing, culturally hearing, late deafened, coda, and much more. These labels are a result of self and social contexts to define an individual. I have now realized that these labels are pushed on by society to other individuals as a way of making a simpler assumption of who that person is. This is a stigma and cultural shaming way of labeling another individual based on society's assumptions. As explored through the video in week 4, deafness is viewed through a binary lens. You are either big D deaf as a cultural aspect of your identity, or little d deaf as a physiological medical view of your deafness, viewing them as disabled. It is interesting to see that the aspect of having this separation from deaf and deaf is a way that the hearing and deaf community separates one group from the other. Although I wish this was not true and that society as a whole would not label one from the other to begin with, it is inevitable. It can also be something that actually benefits the deaf community. If all were labeled the same, then all of the deaf community would be labeled as little d deaf and therefore labeled as disabled, therefore making it a positive aspect to have this separation. Until we are able to understand all of them as a culture, we will continue to have this separation of labels for the deaf community. I wish more of society knew about the difference between the deaf labels because it means a lot to the deaf culture and community. The physiological view of deafness is the view that deaf have an impairment and disability needing fixed by medical means. They view deaf as needing to speak and hear in order to fit in with the rest of society. On the other hand, we can see there is a socio-cultural view of deafness that considers deaf people as part of a cultural, linguistic, and ethnic minority. The majority of society views not only deaf culture, but other cultures under the physiological aspect. Before this class, this is how I viewed deaf individuals. My views have since shifted to a more enlightened, open-minded view on deafness as a unique culture in itself that I wish others had the chance to experience. Deafness is not a disability, it is an identity, a culture and a community that is impacted by the environment that our society creates for them. So, it is necessary to improve the cognition, understanding, and respect of public to deafness, so the views on deafness gradually change. I could only hope to one day have as big of an impact on the deaf individuals as they have had on me. The impact that learning about deaf individuals, community, and culture has had on me goes far beyond what I would have ever imagined. I will carry this knowledge to my profession as a speech pathologist and my everyday interactions with all individuals in society.